very well what Flodden is all about. Very few of them can actually locate the battle site, whereas in England, people think, scratch their heads, I think I know about Flodden, can't quite remember, was it Civil War, was it not, no, Wars of the Roses, ooh gosh, can't remember. And it's an interesting debate. So we'll talk briefly about the main character in this, which is Henry VIII. And Henry VIII is usually considered to have been fat, unfit, 6 wives, like the good life, and be no friend of the Pope. Well, in fact, he was tall, thin, fit, happily married to Catherine of Aragon at the time of Flodden. He loved the hunting, jousting, and he was intensely loyal to the Pope. This is one of the extraordinary factors that we need that has slightly got warped through in telling of the story. 1513, England, Italy, France. This is not the Six Nations rugby. This is what was going on between these 3 countries. Quite interestingly, Louis XII of France, he had campaigned to restrict the powers of the papacy. He had, for example, in 1499, occupied the palace of the Sforza family in Milan, and he was really intent on trying to limit the powers of the papacy. The Pope, Julius II, Giulio II, forms the Holy League, which is an alliance against Louis's aspirations. And he turns to Henry, one of his great allies in the Catholic Church, and Henry invades France in support of the alliance. In other words, he comes in from the north, whilst Louis is campaigning more in the south. England, Scotland, France. Now then, what's happening here? France, being invaded from England, calls on Scotland for support under what's known as the Old Alliance. But James IV and Henry VII, Henry VIII's father, they had signed the Treaty of Perpetual Peace in 1502. So there was a bit of a worry as to what James was doing. Was he doing the right thing? Because he and Henry VII had said, never again shall we have war between England and Scotland. And James IV's wife, Margaret Tudor, is sister to Henry VIII. So you can see it's all kind of bound up in a bit of a tussle here. It makes a good sitcom. What does James do? What should James do in a situation like that? Well, what he does is he crosses into England and he takes what history books record as a yard of English soil, and he sets up camp on Flodden Ridge, which is just on the south side of the River Tweed at Coldstream, and he sits there, and it's a kind of diplomatic gesture that he is not going to advance any further into England, and yet he is going to be able to say to his French alliance, French colleagues, well, I did what you asked, I did invade England. Henry VIII, of course, hears about this, and he's in France, but he orders the Earl of Surrey northwards to deal with the incursion that he's seen or he's heard of. And Surrey's very bold maneuver. Surrey's a very old man at this stage. He's 70 years of age, which in 1513 is a very, very seriously old man. His bold maneuver goes around the back of the Scots from the rear, and he attacks them. And there is a terrible, terrible battle. James IV, his earls, his nobles, and men are killed. And all of those people, those 10,000 Scots, the 3,000 English, are killed in a period of around about 3-4 hours. The rate of slaughter is reckoned to be higher than at the Battle of the Somme in the First World War. Really significant carnage went on there. And as a result, Scotland kind of disappears off the map. Its king is dead, most of its nobles, its earls, its aristocracy are dead. All the people are, James has amassed an enormous army in order to undertake this operation. It kind of shapes the nations as we know them today. That is to say that England, the dominant character, Scotland, much the weaker character. Whereas before Flodden, England and Scotland were really pretty much even Stevens. James was a very cultured king. He spoke a lot of languages. He was well known on the international circuits. Scotland had every prospect of remaining a pretty strong nation, but as a result of Flodden, the balance goes completely out of kilter. But it leads in 1603, so 90 years later, it leads to the United Kingdom, when a Scottish king, James VI, inherits the English throne and marches south to London to claim that throne. and 100 years later on, the Act of Union, which is the political union of England and Scotland, creating Westminster and a single unitary parliament, takes place. So although it's a hugely important moment and a devastating moment for Scotland, actually Scotland does, comes back a bit, and by 1707 we have the Act of Union. I'm not going to go any further by looking into the future and what might happen in a few years' time. So in 2008, 2009, I kind of woke up in the middle of the night one time and I thought, well, what are we going to do about Flodden? Flodden is in our land here. We're the stewards, we're the co-stewards of the land, of the battle site here. What should we be doing about this? And we were very fortunate to gain a placement student from Newcastle University on the Heritage and Education Master's course. I forget its exact title, under Peter Davis. And we were very pleased to get someone to come and work up what it was that we could possibly do to commemorate Flodden. We fairly quickly banned the use of the word celebrate, because celebrating Flodden for a Scotsman, and I am half a Scotsman, I'm a half Highlander, it was not really a considerable, not considered the right thing. So commemoration was the important word here. So Peter, Peter, I forgot his name. Anyway, Peter, the student, came and he interviewed 30 people who we had said, just go and talk to these guys and see what they can feel about Flodden and how we should commemorate it. He took that list of 30, like the story in the Bible, and he went from 30 talents to 80 talents because every person that he interviewed recommended that he, in turn, went on to interview others. They came up with projects list. Projects were already, we discovered that projects were already underway in 2008, 2009 to commemorate Flodden. Local ones, local groups, churches, history societies, the common riding committees, which are prevalent in this border area. But Peter, with his knowledge and training from Newcastle University, particularly under Peter Davis, said, I think this stands up to be an eco-museum. And I think the eco-museum is the Flodden 1513 Eco-Museum. And he explained what an eco-museum was, the concept behind it, the pearl necklace that Peter Davis always describes, of the clasp in the middle being the organizational committee to run it. I did research in Scotland at Tiérna Mullen, which in those days was the only eco-museum in the country. I also went to Italy and Sweden to see how they had taken the idea of taking the concept of eco-museums and run with it. So in 2010, we chose the first 12 sites that were to be part of the Ecomuseum, and that was done through a project funded by LEADER. And I think we just need to bear in mind here that LEADER has now disappeared from our lives as a result of Brexit, and we will struggle, I think, to find a good replacement for that. I hope it will be forthcoming, but we'll need to see. So LEADER funded the composition of an eco-museum. And here are the 12 sites. I'll run through them very, very quickly. They won't mean too much to you, but on the top left, Flodden Field, the monument that stands on Flodden Field to commemorate the battle. Close to it, moving to our right, Branxton Church, where the body of King James was taken after the battle and lay before he was removed. Etal Castle, just to its right there, English Heritage run that one now. And it was very close by. Heatherslaw Corn Mill, a mill that's been existing for nearly 800 years, and we know that the Scottish troops, when they were camped on Flodden Hill, very close by, used that to grind their corn. Moving to the middle row, Coldstream Museum, formerly on the site of Coldstream Abbey, from which the nuns came after the battle to tend to the sick and the dying, and in particular to the nobles and the important people. Twisel Bridge to its right, a most magnificent bridge, formerly one of the largest medieval single-span bridge, crucial to the Earl of Surrey because he was able to use that bridge to get his guns and his men across a pretty dangerous river, being the River Till. Then Norham Castle, famously painted by Turner, but that had fallen to James just before the battle. Then Lady Kirk Church, fascinating here, one of the only two churches in Scotland to have a solid stone roof, had been built by James IV, because in a previous excursion to the border, he had very nearly drowned in the River Tweed and had commanded this Lady Kirk Church to be restored and built. And it's the site of the only known bust of King James IV anywhere in the land. Barmore Castle Country Park. This is Barmore Castle, the site where the Earl of Surrey spent his last night before the battle. And this is now a country park. It's a caravan site. It's a magnificent place. But the owners of that had already decided, before I even got excited about Flodden, had already decided to commemorate this by commissioning these magnificent wrought iron gates from a local wrought ironsmith to show off aspects of the battle. Wheatwood Bridge is a similar operation, similar site to Twizel. It was used by Surrey earlier in the build-up. To the right then, Fletcher. Fletcher is well known here in the Borders. Fletcher was, as we say around here, the only man from Selkirk to come back alive for the battle. And he was a character who went, 80 of them went from Selkirk to join James's forces, and only Fletcher returned. And we'll see him later on as we go through this presentation. And finally, the Flodden Wall in Edinburgh. You have to imagine that news gets to Edinburgh that the king is dead, the aristocracy, everybody's Scotland is done for. What is Surrey going to do? Is he going to press home the advantage and come in and take Edinburgh? No, he doesn't. He stops. He goes back home. He has defeated the king. He goes back home. And although there is a fear that the English will come and capture Edinburgh once and for all, they erect this wall, which is actually quite prominent in the city centre of Edinburgh, where bits of it very much still extant. And Historic Scotland were very keen that the story of Flodden Wall should be told greater, and they were very keen to join us as part of the Ecomuseum. So this is just a link of how they all fit together. That'll be familiar to you in studying ecomuseums, how sites all link in with each other, how you spin from one to another. We set up this virtual visitor centre with the website. We had leaflets available in hard copy and downloadable. Bear in mind, this is 10 years ago now, so we are, the days of virtual technology were just not as developed as they are today. But we did have signage at site, and importantly, we had very early day QR codes. I think you can just see in those bottom two pictures, top right-hand corner of each sign, there is a QR code. We were one of the first to sort of really put those onto signs at the time. So each of the 12 sites in the original Ecomuseum had its own leaflet, as you can see in the bottom right-hand corner there. In 2013, we applied for and were successful, and very grateful we are to the Heritage Lottery Fund, who agreed to support us in 4 central projects surrounding the commemoration. There was to be museums, archives, documentary research. There was to be an archaeological program, educational program, and crucially, expansion of the Ecomuseum. And the real reason for HLF's support for this was articulated by the head of HLF in the northeast of England, based in Newcastle, who said, as HLF looks into the future and considers what projects it's going to fund, it's conscious of one thing particularly, and that is that the changing in demographics in the UK. We are becoming an older population. We need to mitigate against the costs to society of an older population. In other words, we need health, well-being, we need mental stimulation, because actually the costs that are associated with failure in the mind are greater to the society than health problems are. We need to support funds, projects that are going to engage the elder sector, the elderly profile of our population. And very, very quickly, just to gallop through these, the Scottish Borders Council put on some exhibitions at the Halliwell's House Museum in Selkirk, just up the road. Coldstream Museum also did the same. There was an exhibition of Mochlinware. Some of you will be familiar with Mochlinware. I'll just show you a couple of examples of it. It's Tiérna ware. But what's crucial here was that this picture here on the right is a copy of a book, or is a book that was given by the Duke of Roxburgh at the time to Queen Victoria when she came looking around the borders, came on a visit here, and that cover there is made of wood that was felled from Flodden Field and decorated in Mochlinware transfers. Now that book was presented to Queen Victoria and pretty much as far as anybody knows has not really moved very far from Windsor Castle ever in its life, but we were able to secure it and it was on display at Coldstream Museum for a while. So it was a really significant part of the history and heritage of Flodden. Berwick Archives and Hawick Heritage in the borders here, they put on ancestral heritage days because the ability for people to research their families and try and get right back to the stories of Flodden and where their families fitted in is all possible nowadays. Researching archives. We had courses in reading old script, paleography. Now, that's what it looks like. Nobody can really read it. We all know the existence of a lot of these historical documents, but actually very few people can read it. And our archivist here in Berwick is a trained paleographer, and she agreed that she would run training courses. When HLF asked her how many candidates she thought she would get, she said, oh, maybe about 20. Well, I can tell you she got 43 in the first course, of which 41 completed, and she ran 2 more courses. So the Borders now really is a hotbed of...
James, I'm going to have to give you just a minute to wrap up, if that's okay.
Oh, no, not at all.
I know you've got lots to say, but
right,
just because
okay,
we have
I'll
a bit of a tight schedule.
Excavations, apologies, and the creation of the Tilvas. I really want to come on to the Ecomuseum. We went from 12 to 40 sites. We're across the UK from the Central Belt to the South Coast. We include things like Mary Rose Trust down in Portsmouth, up in Linlithgow. We've got the palace and the church there. We had work done by a local charity called the Remembering Flodden. I just quickly wanted to show you here. I just wanted, if I can get this, if you'll allow me, just to. This is the important, because the tangible and intangible aspects of Flodden are very, very important. The late Duke of Edinburgh, when he died, was, I don't know if this is going to work. Here we go. You will have seen this on your screens if you were tuning in to the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral the other day. This is The Flowers of the Forest, composed in memory of Flodden, and the tune that is played on every solemn occasion in any part of the land. I'm not sure how I can stop this one. Will I come out of that altogether now? Sorry, I've lost my spot.
I think you just have to move to the next slide, James, and then it should stop.
Sorry, I'm now lost. I've lost. Am I there, Kat?
You're there.
I'm there. Right. Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. Pressed the wrong button at the time, I think. And I can't get back onto this. Here we go. Scottish Chamber composed a piece of music. So just very quickly, and I know Victoria wants me to wrap up this here. We had the Flodden Tartan commemorated. There was more work done under Fletcher, which had been the banner that his statue put up in 1913, and then they did a peace garden for the commemoration of 500 years. Books were written about Flodden. We engendered a whole lot of different. So what are we about? We're about maintaining the community around these areas and the community associated with Flodden. We have a shared heritage of all kinds of aspects of Flodden. We are about remembrance, and really we are in the Borders here. We are where we are because of where we once were, and that's an important consideration for us. In 2020 and 21, we're a not-for-profit company. We have no employees. We have no funds. Myself and my neighbouring land owner next door are the two directors of this company. But we act still as a web hub for information, awareness, signposting, contacts, and so on. So we're kind of a different ecomuseum to most of you, I guess, but that in a sense, and very quickly, and I'm apologies if I've run over here, Victoria. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, James, for a really rich presentation with loads of really great examples of everything that's come out of the Ecomuseum. So I'm really pleased to now introduce our second speaker for this panel, which is Aine Young. So Aine retired from her post as Director of Sustainability at Bangor University at the end of December 2020, although it doesn't sound like a very tranquil retirement in all that she's doing. She has spent much of her career working with marginal communities in semi-arid regions of Africa mainly. In recent years, Wales has been her focus, where challenges are similar to those faced by communities worldwide. A long-term vision and a plan, actions that can lead to improvements with integration and whole community collaboration are critical principles encapsulated in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 215. And Aine is keen to see ways of working promoted in the Act being widely adopted. Post-retirement, she maintains an interest in the Penllyn, and I'm going to apologise about my pronunciation, Ecoamgeddfa Ecomuseum, which she helped establish in collaboration with partners. She also, on a part-time basis, leads the cross-cutting work of embedding sustainable thinking and working throughout the Iveragh Ecomuseum live operation funded by the EU Ireland Wales Interreg programme. Promoting an appreciation of tangible and intangible cultural heritage forms part of her vision for ensuring the viability of communities and the health and the well-being of future generations. Her vision is that Penllyn and Iveragh are respected as homes as well as destinations. And it's with great pleasure that I hand over to Aine now.
Thanks very much. Am I sharing my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, fantastic. So that's a relief. And if anything goes wrong, somebody give me a shout. Thanks very much. Anyway, thanks for the invitation to participate in what's been a fascinating conference so far. I'm here to represent the partners of Ecoamgeddfa, the Llyn Ecomuseum, and I want to reflect on the Llyn Ecomuseum and the way we do things here, and briefly touch on the framework of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which, as it happens, reflects the way of doing things in Penllyn. Now, inevitably, this is a whistle-stop tour, as we've had from everybody else. So those who want to delve deeper into the Llyn Ecoamgeddfa, we've got a chapter in the Intangible Tangible book. It's actually chapter 37, not 40, and my colleague Gwennan's going to post the links to these on the chat. So the Llyn Ecoamgeddfa is the first ecomuseum in Wales, and it encompasses the pointy bit of Wales, the peninsula extending 30 miles or 50 kilometres into the Irish Sea. It's full of ancient and modern history and culture, and it's a bastion of Welsh language, with 80% plus of the population first language Welsh speakers. Now I'm going to share with you how the people living here currently in this small corner of Wales have started realising their ambitions of preserving, promoting and celebrating their language, culture and heritage and skills, and by doing so facing up to the economic and social realities and challenges of modern day life, away from the hustle and bustle of the major urban conurbations. Now the challenges of post-COVID, post-Brexit UK are enormous, and we don't have time to explore them all, but they include over-tourism, a huge influx of affluent people who wish to escape to the country, skewing house prices out of the reach of people whose families have lived here for generations. And as we've heard already, these issues are not exclusive to Penllyn. They're familiar concerns for areas of England, such as the Lake District, for example, similar areas in Cornwall, Scotland, Angus touched on it, and Ireland too. The added dimension in Penllyn is the strength and normality of the Welsh language and the associated cultural heritage, which is in danger of being diluted. I'm not going to labour these points, but they are points to bear in mind. Now, many successful partnerships get going as a result of personal contacts, and the Llyn Ecoamgeddfa is no different. In 2014, Arwel, our project manager, and he's here in the conference, he approached me with an idea. He'd heard of the Ecomuseum concept and had visited Angus, who's already taken us on a lovely tour of the Skye Ecomuseum this morning. Arwel convinced me that this was an ideal model to progress some of the work of the Llŷn Landscape Partnership, which he led, and which has been in existence for more than a decade, bringing together statutory, environmental, economic and social groups to work for the benefit of the area. And I was invited to add the university to this mix. Now, to me, the Pen Llŷn way of working is refreshing. The Llŷn Landscape Partnership is more than the sum of individual parts. People in the same boat rowing together in the same direction. They, the partnership and the communities of Pen Llŷn, identified that the area is full to capacity in peak school holiday season. And they wanted to co-develop a year-round offer that would appeal to segments of visitors that could visit during the shoulder and off-season, creating employment and entrepreneurial opportunities. So a partnership was created between 7 heritage sites around the coast of Pen Llŷn, led by Gwyn from Oriel Plas Glynnewyddw, with me as the Bangor University partner. We were awarded 11 months UK Welsh Government Knowledge Transfer Partnership, KTP funds, to employ Gwenan, who's also in the conference, to develop the concept and platforms. And that, in a nutshell, is how the Llŷn Ecoamgeddfa, the first ecomuseum in Wales, and to our knowledge, the first in the world to be driven by digital technology, was born. And we continue to grow. In January 2020, after several years spent securing the funding, we started working with Irish partners on the Llŷn Iveragh Ecomuseum project, otherwise known as LIVE, and Lucy Taylor in the next presentation will reveal more about our co-working. But now I'm going to focus on the Llŷn Ecomuseum and introduce you to the partners and their themes. As you saw in the previous map, our sites form that pearl necklace around the coast of the peninsula, linked by the Wales Coastal Path with Ecoamgeddfa, the clasp that binds us. The North Portal is at Nant Gwrtheyrn, a secluded Victorian quarry village, home of the Welsh Language and Heritage Centre. It links our language and culture with our industrial past. The Llŷn Maritime Museum is located within St Mary's Church in Nefyn, rebuilt between 1825 and 1827, but dates back to the 6th century. Here we find a unique collection of maritime artifacts which tell the story of the ships that were built locally and the sailors and captains who worked on them, and some of those are buried in the church cemetery. The Llŷn Maritime Museum brings the maritime economy of the past to life for the present day. Now, Canolfan Felin Ucha weaves together the social, economic, cultural and environmental aspects of the Ecoamgeddfa. It was developed as a community skills hub and cultural centre, offering activities ranging from organic gardening and permaculture to highly skilled eco-building and heritage skills training projects. A varied programme of storytelling and folk music is held in the traditional roundhouse, with local and European storytellers perpetuating oral history, providing a local and international flavour. The aim here is to empower and enrich the lives of the young and not so young and their local communities. Moving on to Porth y Swnt, one of our National Trust properties. This is a unique interpretation centre at the heart of Aberdaron, at the very tip of the peninsula. Now, of all our sites, this is the one that epitomises the ecomuseum concept. Its sole purpose is to offer snippets of information on what's out there in the local environment. This is the wider museum without walls. Plas yn Rhyw is another National Trust property in the Ecoamgeddfa's portfolio. This is a delightful manor house with an ornamental garden and spectacular views across Cardigan Bay. It's the most traditional in a UK sense of our sites, but it also has, funded by the Llŷn Landscape Partnership, renovated 2 stone bwthyn unos, cottages built overnight. One is decorated as it would have been originally, and the other renovated to modern day standards. The tenant in the modern cottage used to live on Enlli, and his garden is a joy to see. Oriel Plas Glynneweddw Gallery has been in existence for over 150 years, and it's Wales' oldest art venue and commercial gallery. The Grade 2 listed building is a prime example of Victorian Gothic mansion. Inside there's a magnificent Jacobean staircase and hammer beam roof. It has accredited museum status, an amphitheatre, a forgotten forest, a new cafe, as well as regular exhibitions. And there are workshops and activities during the holiday season. And then completing our tour of Penllyn, we arrive in Plas Heli at the southern easterly gateway of the Ecoamgeddfa, closing the loop we started in the north in Nantgwrthairn. Based in Pwllheli, it's a not-for-profit company established to operate the new Welsh National Sailing Academy and Event Centre, which opened during the summer of 2015. Plas Heli is a home for community outdoor pursuits. Sailing, rowing, surfing clubs are based, with activities held in Welsh, reinforcing the language as a contemporary and relevant medium of communication. International visitors attracted by the top quality sailing events are made aware of the wider Ecoamgeddfa offer, and accompanying family members not actively engaged in the sport are encouraged to venture west. So the Ecoamgeddfa exists to deliver the priorities shared by the communities with the Llyn Landscape Partnership. We're working towards extending the holiday season, attracting visitors to Penllyn beyond the traditional weeks, distributing numbers throughout the year rather than attracting more numbers at peak times, raising awareness of the culture and natural capital locally, building confidence and renewed appreciation of our unique identity locally. And this is leading to an increase in cultural tourism in the area, more sustainable and regenerative tourism rather than the current extractive model, boosting economic, social and environmental benefits to the area, ensuring Penllyn is respected as our home as well as a destination. Our targets audience are retirees, couples, families, local people, anybody with an interest in culture, language, heritage and nature. We want to introduce slower tourism, turning the micro break into a long weekend, short breaks into a week-long stay. And how we're doing this? Well, it's a collaborative digital marketing campaign with the 7 partners promoting the sites and their many and varied activities. The website serves as a common platform. Activities such as developing a circular walk is in progress. We've got training programs and digital marketing techniques for staff and volunteers. And we're building on this success by partnering with the Irish colleagues to establish an ecomuseum in the Iveragh Peninsula, County Kerry. And working with our Irish partners, we can move the offer to the next step, aligning content with branding, turning the walking app into a story map and so on. And Lucy will elaborate more on that in the next presentation. And that's the way we do things here, reflecting the spirit of the Welsh Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which is designed to help develop a vision based on long-term thinking, embracing the 4 pillars of sustainable development, promoting 5 ways of working, meeting 7 Welsh wellbeing goals and addressing these 17 global UN goals. Could this 14517 approach be a way of giving communities the skills to prepare for crises and emergencies such as COVID-19 recovery, Brexit, biodiversity extinction and climate change? But how does this map on what we want to do? Well, the one principle of long-term vision is to promote sustainable thinking, where Penllyn is a home and a destination, providing opportunities for the communities today and of the future to prosper in their own locale, on their own terms, whilst enriching the visitor experience, moving away from extractive tourism. The 4 pillars are the economy, environment, society and culture. This obsession with growth and increasing visitor number come what way is short-term thinking, and we've got to balance the quest for economic growth with social, environment and cultural considerations. And thinking in monetary terms just risks killing the goose that lays the golden egg. Think Venice, Barcelona and so on. We're concerned with the environment, landscape, land management, diversity loss, climate change, and so on. And the importance of these on the economy, society, and culture. We've got the 5 ways of working, long-term thinking. All our actions must lead to things getting better. At a minimum, do no harm. Collaboration is big in Penllyn, started with the Clean Landscape Partnership, enhanced through collaboration between the 7 sites as hubs, collaborating with local businesses, integrating with local national development plans and so on, and involving communities as key partners. Involve is our mantra, bringing people along with us. And by doing this, we're contributing towards the 7 Wellbeing Goals of Wales and the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. And I'm looking forward to hearing more from Prof. Borrelli's presentation on the role of Sustainable Development Goals in Italy's ecomuseums this afternoon. Now, we're very encouraged by the progress made by the Ecoamgeddfa so far, and we're enthused by the collaboration developing with the Irish partners. Thank you for listening. Croeso, welcome to all of you, and if you do decide to visit, please get in touch. And if you have any other questions or comments about this presentation or anything else, I mean, it has been a little bit of a competition on talking fast, hasn't it? Feel free to contact me directly or via chat. Diolch yn fawr iawn.
Okay, thank you so much, Aina, for keeping to time. And also, I've written a million notes about your presentation, so I found it very, very interesting, and lots of cool stuff to think about. So, last but not least for this panel, I'm delighted to introduce Lucy Taylor. So, Lucy is project manager of the LIVE project, which is a collaboration between academic departments, community organisations, and local government in Ireland and Wales. The project is led by the School of Biological, Earth and Environmental Sciences based in University College Cork. LIVE aims to establish an eco-museum on the Iveragh Peninsula in Southwest Ireland and to strengthen, I'm going to say this wrong again, despite having it beautifully pronounced before, the Ecoamgeddfa in North Wales. With a background in education, writing, coastal ecology and research management, and a lifelong attachment to the Iveragh Peninsula, Lucy is now leading the administrative aspects of the LIVE project and helping to drive its progress in Ireland. So delighted to hand over to Lucy now.
Thank you very much. I will try and share my screen. Sorry now. Can you see my slides, or are you all looking at Teams? I'm never sure.
That's perfect, it's all good.
Perfect. Okay, great. I am the project manager of the LIVE project, and I'm going to follow on from my colleague, Dr. Aina Young's presentation by talking a little bit in general about the LIVE project and then focusing more specifically on our work on Iveragh Peninsula here in Ireland, where we are in the very early stages of establishing an eco-museum. So it's been lovely to get these whirlwind tours of all of your eco-museums that are all up and running and successful. And yeah, hopefully we'll be there someday. So to start off, a little bit about the LIVE project. So as we've heard, it's been co-funded by the European Regional Development Fund under the Ireland Wales Cooperation Programme. Is a collective project between 3 partners in Ireland, 3 partners in Wales. So yeah, crossing both sides of the Irish Sea. Einar already gave a little introduction to the overall goals of LIVE, the overarching one being to establish an eco-museum on the Iveragh Peninsula, and also to strengthen and develop a new pillar for the Ecoamgeddfa initiative on the Clean Peninsula. The other goals I think will be pretty familiar to all of you, as they're kind of the goal of the eco-museum concept in general. And just to say that although the 2 eco-museums will be separate entities, the hope is that this spirit of collaboration and knowledge exchange will really continue beyond the lifetime of the project, and that both regions will benefit from the ways of working that Einar described so well for us just now. Again, I think we won't dwell on the impacts, as I think these are the same for most of us and also have been touched on by Einar already. So just to put them up there. But what I'd like to do is I'm going to make an assumption that so I'll give a little bit of an introduction to where we are and what's already happening here. So Iveragh is the largest of these toasts that's out from the southwest of Ireland into the Atlantic. It's something like 1,000 square kilometres. I'm not actually sure, and I was trying to look to find the length of the coastline and I couldn't find that either. It's mostly a very mountainous region. We have some of the highest mountains in Ireland, but it's also dotted with a range of environments. We've got lowland bogs, freshwater lakes, and the kinds of long sandy beaches that tourist boards drool over. We're also surrounded by some large inhabited islands and some smaller uninhabited islands as well. So beyond the mountains and off the map that we're looking at, there are the towns of Killorglin, Killarney and Kenmare are the gateways to the peninsula, and these are the towns that I suppose have benefited the most from tourism. In our focus area around the coastline, mostly it's just small villages that dot the famous Ring of Kerry driving route. Some of these villages benefit from this type of tourism more than others. And specific locations also capitalise on things like golf, boat trips to the Skellig Islands, or specific landmarks such as gardens or beaches. The major town, Carsiveen, has suffered dramatic population declines in recent decades. And although the region presents an ideal backdrop for Instagram posts, coach tours, and that kind of tourism, a lack of year-round employment, a lack of connectivity, and a real lack of long-term accommodation are just some of the issues for people who would like to live and work in the area. I think it's safe to say that we all have a lot of those things in common in the regions we're talking about today. I might also point out that we're quite remote here. We're about 2 hours from a city as well. But in saying all of that and pointing out all of it, is no shortage of our vision, and we are by no means starting from a blank canvas. Like our partners in the Clean Landscape Partnership and all that had gone on before they set up the Ecoamgeddfa, a lot of hard work has already gone into developing initiatives, gathering information, applying for accreditations, and doing a lot to make the best out of the area. So I'm going to give you a really short summary of some of the things that are already in existence here. So perhaps the most famous is the Skellig's UNESCO World Heritage Site. Recently increased in fame because it appeared in some Star Wars films. There's also international accreditation for the Kerry Geopark. We have the Kerry International Dark Sky Reserve, which is the only gold tier dark sky reserve in the Northern Hemisphere. I always have to say that quite slowly. Derrynane House is an example of one of our historic areas. It's a national historical park. And around the coast and inland, there are sites protected under national and under EU law for a range of rare habitats and species that the peninsula harbours. These include the Kerry slug, the Kerry lily, the freshwater pearl mussel, the natterjack toad, and a range of marine species, including whales and dolphins, sharks, rays, and seabirds, the most iconic of which, of course, is the puffin. As well as these living species, there's also the Valentia tetrapod trackway, and this site, excuse me, shows evidence of one of the first animals ever to crawl out of the water on land. The peninsula is also dotted with rock art and humans, including stones, and the peninsula is bordered by the Killarney National Park and the Kerry UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. In addition, actions are underway at the UNESCO World Heritage Site at the cable station on Valentia Island, where the first cable was laid between these islands and America. And to establish a Blueway Trail and a Greenway Trail that would complement the existing 214-kilometre long looped walking route that encircles the peninsula. I think it's safe to say that if communities could live off of their natural heritage, they would be very rich here indeed. And of course, this has already been recognised in various marketing and branding campaigns, including the Skellig Coast, the county-wide Your Natural Escape brand, and the Wild Atlantic Way that runs the length of Ireland's west coast and includes the Ring of Kerry and Skellig Ring touring routes. Last, But equally important to all of the others is the Gaeltacht region, which is centred on the western tip of the peninsula and is designated as a stronghold of the Irish language. All of this gives us quite a cluttered map, and our two graphic and marketing people who are present here today will be screaming at me. But that, of course, is the point. With all of these world-class features and initiatives led by communities and special interest groups, national and international organisations, why has everybody not heard of the Iveragh Peninsula? Well, that's where the concept of the Ecomuseum comes in, and that's where our challenge lies. The current danger is that the groups and individuals that have dedicated significant time and effort to these initiatives will run out of steam if they aren't supported with the kind of long-term thinking and collaboration that Einar mentioned as the underlying principles of the LIVE project. Our challenge is how to bring together all of the strands and activities that I've mentioned into a coherent thing. To make the intangible tangible, as Einar also noted, and to capitalise not just on the natural assets of the region, but on the strong cultural heritage and the community spirit, and to do so in a way that is led by the community and keeps a really clear eye on the long term. So what are we doing? Well, here are some of the actions that we've identified for ourselves. The first task has been to take stock of existing resources, knowledge gaps, and areas of interest of local people, and also to identify similar projects that are running alongside ours. We have established a team of knowledge gatherers to explore the area, to talk to people and develop a bank of information and resources that can be used by educators, business owners, researchers, or any interested local or visitor. Of course, engaging with communities has not been helped by social distancing and travel restrictions. Iveragh is a big area, and only being allowed to travel within a 5-kilometre radius for a number of months was not helpful at all. However, we have managed to engage with people one-to-one, and we hope to really delve into community workshops and meetings this autumn. We have started already to pilot some of our digital resources, and we've engaged a company to develop and consolidate resources for the region. We've also recently hired a marketing officer, who is in the audience, who will work with the community to develop a co-branding and co-marketing strategy for the region once we've been able to develop what the vision for the Ecomuseum really is. This will then be complemented by training and workshops in digital marketing and in natural history and heritage for local residents, as a lot of you have already noted you're running in your regions today. So one of the first things that we did was to run a detailed survey to gather some input into how local people felt about their environment and what their ideas for low season tourism on the peninsula are. Of course, we had to do this online, which was less than ideal, but we received 80 very detailed responses that we're using now to guide us in our next steps. Respondents were asked about the natural features that they know a lot about, ones that they don't know about, which areas contribute to their personal and their economic well-being, and for their ideas around extending the tourism season. They were also given the opportunity to say as much as they want and to add comments. And they gave us really useful insights and highlighted some themes that we hadn't previously considered, especially around current barriers. This is a small example. It's a mind map of some of the suggestions that were given from just one very small village for how to extend the tourism season locally. It's really insightful, and some of them are ideas that we'd already thought about and that fit really well with, maybe the kinds of examples we've already been looking at of ecomuseums, and some of them were things that we hadn't considered yet. As I mentioned, we have this team of knowledge gatherers who are researching the natural heritage of the area. They're out and about at the moment, studying their various themes. And all of the information that they gather will be available for use by local businesses or individuals. And in many cases, the information has been led by local people who've given us leads and tips. We're very open to exploring whatever themes come up, what people are interested in. Our main motivation is really to provide accessible, correct, and locally relevant information that is useful for the people who want it. Some of this information is already available in the form of digital trails that focus on specific aspects or existing looped walks on the peninsula. We also have taster information that focuses on the shoulder seasons of spring and autumn. And we focused some energy on developing materials for schools and educators, including activity packs, information sheets, and we're trialling citizen science initiatives and working with certain schools to provide them with hyper-local information that they can weave into their own lesson plans. This includes things that they can see from their own windows or explore within walking distance of their classrooms. In the work that we've already done, certain concerns of local people have been repeatedly raised, and some of these will present challenges for us. Fears around over-tourism, particularly in certain sensitive sites, are repeated all over the peninsula. The common refrain is that there are too many projects and that people keep starting things, getting loads of funding, then the funding ends, they disappear, and it's not clear what they achieved or where people can find out the information that they discovered. In talking about an extended season, businesses frequently mention that they struggle to get staff outside of holiday seasons and that they're burned out after the manic August period anyway. They also say that one business can't stay open on its own into the autumn. There needs to be a network of businesses to provide an attractive offering. But also people have noted that sometimes it's nice to just have the place to themselves and not have lots of visitors. Most worrying for us is probably the skepticism about the model. So we've received criticism that we're aiming to mine the locality for academic information, displace existing businesses, or duplicate networks already in place. It's also important for us to acknowledge that most of the businesses in operation already cooperate, co-promote, and talk to each other. It's a small place, of course they do. Difficult to sum up or summarize something that is so unfinished and so vague, except by asking the obvious question, and that is, what will the Iveragh look like? What it will look like is really a guess, but hopefully next year we'll be able to put it into the Fellowship of the Ring, and hopefully this will be a better model than the existing Ring of Kerry, where people pass through briefly without really engaging with the diversity of communities, landscapes, and features that exist on the peninsula. One thing we know is that the Ecomuseum will be underpinned by rich and accurate information about local natural heritage. So how will we do it? This is the last slide, don't worry. So most importantly, we really need to listen, and listen broadly. This region has suffered a lot of external migration, but it also has a mix of newcomers and blow-ins, as well as its long-term residents. So it's important that we take a broad view of that community and include the voices that don't always shout the loudest or join all the committees. It's critical that we develop a clear long-term sustainability plan and that we work transparently in everything that we do. Everything that we create must be archived, accessibly and made openly available to all stakeholders and anyone who wants it. Knowledge exchange is critical and is the really key element in how we're working, and this includes the high-level networking and also locally within and between communities. And throughout all of this, it's very important for us to be adaptable. We've already had to modify our initial goals and intentions, and this will continue to happen as we progress. I'd like to thank you all for listening, and to all of my partners in the LIVE project, both in Ireland and in Wales. Diolch.